Hello and welcome back to Game Domain. Mario is one of the most easily recognizable video game characters of all time, so it's not really surprising that he has a whole slew of games using his name and image. Somewhere along the ride, Nintendo realized that Mario could be used to help sell games that were completely unrelated to the main series, and along came the sports games, which happen to be the topic of this video. Today we will be ranking the Mario sports games by their Metascores on Metacritic. When making the list, I realized that there were some ties. Rather than having multiple games take up one slot, I used the user score as the tiebreaker. So, without further ado, let's move on to our first game. Coming in at number 22 is Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games. Wow, that's a mouthful. This game has an appalling Metascore of 55. Only 55. To put that into perspective, that's just barely above Duke Nukem Forever. Apparently the 4th edition into the series just didn't quite hit the mark. Number 21 is the one and only Mario Tennis Ultra Smash with a Metascore of 58. Ultra Smash was widely criticized for not having enough content despite already being a well-established series by this point. Number 20 is Mario Sports Superstars with a Metascore of 62. Despite scathing reviews by critics, many users actually enjoyed the game quite a bit. The game featured 5 separate game modes, each corresponding to a different sport. The main criticism is that the game adds nothing when compared to previous iterations, which is fair. However, Super Mario Superstars actually has a heavier focus on online multiplayer than previous games, which is the game's saving grace among players. Falling at number 19 is Mario Sports Mix with a Metascore of 64. Yeesh. Critics seem not to like these multiple games in one format. Yet again, the users like the game more than the critics, largely because of the multiplayer, although some users have praised the game for actually having a decent story mode. Coming up at number 18 is Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games with a Metascore of 65. This game was actually received fairly well. The game was fun and kept many of the features that were well received in previous games. However, the game was heavily criticized for a lack of content since they scaled back the number of events that were in previous games. Nonetheless, the game was still an improvement over the 2014 iteration of the series. At number 17, we have Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games with a Metascore of 66. This game was lauded for being too childish. One critic even said, "It's perfect for a birthday with chocolate cake, fun, and accessible, but that's if you haven't reached puberty yet." Yikes. Next up, at number 16, we have Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games with a score of 67. Man, these critics just won't give this series a break. The two main criticisms with this game are the lack of replayability in solo mode and the bugs in some of the events. Taking up spot number 15 is Mario Tennis Open with a Metascore of 69 and a user score of 6.8. First, I would like to note that this is one of the only games that the critic score was actually higher than the user score. From what I've read, it seems like the main criticism of the game is that rather than having a singular goal, like completing a campaign, you're left to grind to unlock things within the game, and that's the sole purpose of the game. Yet again, the saving grace seems to be the game's online multiplayer. Sliding right on by in our number 14 spot is Super Mario Sluggers with a Metascore of 69 and a user score of 7.8. Though this game was generally regarded as fun, many people found the changes made to the controls questionable at best. Barely making it into our number 13 slot is Mario Hoops 3-on-3 with a Metascore of 69 and a user score of 7.9. This game is actually pretty fun, but not very accessible. I remember being frustrated the first time I played because the controls didn't seem to make much sense. Up next, in our number 12 slot, is Dance Dance Revelution Mario Mix with a Metascore of 69 and an astounding user score of 8.4. That's absurd. To put that into perspective, Grand Theft Auto has a user score of 8.3, Dishonored has a user score of 8.4, Skyrim has a user score of 8.2, and Metal Gear Solid 5 has a user score of 8.2. Obviously, Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix is regarded as one of the best games of all time, at least among the users. So why is the critic score so low? Well, it turns out forcing people to review a Dance Dance Revolution game might not be the best idea. Many of the critics that gave it a low score said that the only people who would enjoy it are either children or DDR enthusiasts, which is like saying that people who enjoy a Magic the Gathering game are people who enjoy playing card-based combat games. It's absurd and disrespectful to this legendary game. Sliding into our number 11 slot is Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games with a Metascore of 72. I actually had a lot of fun with this game when it came out. It fixed most of the issues that its predecessor had, and I found that the mini-games just tended to be more enjoyable, especially when played with friends or family. Taking up slot number 10 is Super Mario Strikers with a Metascore of 76 and a user score of 8.6. This game was all around pretty well received. Many people say that it's all around a fun game, just not stellar in any way. Spot 9 is occupied by Mario Superstar Baseball with a Metascore of 76 and a user score of 8.7. The general consensus is that this game was incredibly fun, but lacked in the single-player experience. Yet another game saved by the multiplayer game modes. Coming up at 8 is Mario Golf World Tour with a Metascore of 78. Though golf is usually regarded as boring, critics and fans alike seem to think that this game is fun and easy to get hooked on. Many reviewers also note that the game has deceptively complex playing mechanics and that it takes a short time to become proficient with it, but hours after hours of practice to master. Up next at number 7 is Mario Strikers Charged with a Metascore of 79. Without a single negative review from critics on Metacritic, the only complaint that seems widespread is that this soccer game doesn't have quite enough to do in the single-player campaign. That doesn't seem to matter to a few who find the multiplayer to be phenomenal. Barely making it to number 6 is Mario Power Tennis, which has a Metascore of 80. With a great variety in game modes, strong multiplayer, and graphics that were, for the time, phenomenal, it's hard to find much of anything wrong with this game. Any criticisms are relatively minor, like awkward menu navigation and the lack of real goals, aside from getting medals. The first entry into our top 5 is Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, with a Metascore of 81 and a user score of 8.1. Not only is this a very solid Mario title, it's also a great golf game. It featured strong multiplayer, some of the best graphics for the Nintendo 64, and loads to do in single player. Slot number 4 is occupied by Mario Tennis Power Tour, which has a Metascore of 81 and a user score of 8.2. This game only released on the Game Boy Advance, so the number of reviews are somewhat limited. However, the general consensus is that the game is fun, but fairly shallow since it doesn't offer much in the story mode. Coming up at number 3 is Mario Golf Advanced Tour, with a Metascore of 84. Just like Mario Tennis Power Tour, this game was only released for the Game Boy Advance, so there's definitely a lack of reviews. The only criticism to be found for this game is that the graphics are clunky and jagged, but that wasn't uncommon for the Game Boy Advance. Overall, the game was fun and had a lot of replayability. Slot number 2 is Mario Golf, which has a Metascore of 91 and a user score of 7.9. This game was phenomenal, and is applauded for appealing to both fans of highly realistic golfing simulators and goofy golf games. This game inspired a whole series of golf games from Nintendo and definitely deserves this spot. Finally, we have our number 1 choice, Mario Tennis, with a Metascore of 91 and a user score of 8.9. The star of this game is definitely the multiplayer. You could spend hours playing this game with friends or family without any issue. However, there isn't much to the single-player mode, leading it to be repetitive if played too much. This game is one of the few that helped to define Nintendo for their multiplayer-based gameplay, and for that it deserves this spot. What do you think of this list? Was anything too high? What about games that you think received too much criticism? Let us know in the comments, and please remember to like and subscribe. As always, thanks for watching Game Domain.